there is a new 4K UHD release out there of the 1987 horror film Creepshow 2, and some very impressive limited edition packaging from Arrow Video. And you see how thick this is. And now we're going to take a look at this packaging in this video. Now, I will say, this was previously released as a Blu-ray. And I do have a copy of the standard edition of the Blu-ray. This was in a 2K transfer. The 2K, as far as I could tell, it came with the same packaging. But now that's out of print. But this is your opportunity to get this amazing packaging right now from Creepshow 2 before the limited edition goes out of print. It's still going to be in print for a little while yet, but it will eventually most likely go out of print like the Blu-ray did, and you'll only be able to get the standard edition release. But like I was saying before, we're going to take a look at this packaging within this video. We're going to talk about this new 4K transfer, which is friggin' pretty good, and we're going to talk about the film itself. And if you haven't done so already, if you would like this video, I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films, and as you can see, I'm an avid physical media movie collector. I've been doing review videos on this channel for a little over a year now. You can check out all my previous content on the Watkins Films channel. Now, I first saw Creepshow 2 probably, I don't know exactly when it was, probably in the early 90s. It was on regular television, and it had the commercials in it and all that fun stuff. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw it before the first Creepshow. Here's a Scream Factory release of the first Creepshow. This is the Blu-ray, and this is the 4K version. I really like this Blu-ray packaging a lot better than this new 4K, so I've kept both of them. But this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I liked it better for the longest time than the first one. But because of the way the first one is shot very artistically, it actually incorporates some comic book stuff into some of the shorts. Like it suddenly will change into comic book lighting and kind of go extreme in a way, which at the time, which my feelings are different on it now. I really enjoy those aspects of the original Creepshow, and I think this is a superior film. But at the time when I saw Creepshow 2, it doesn't have that, and it goes more straightforward with the storytelling, which if it's not as distracting, even though, like I said before, I do like the comic book aspect of it now. But it doesn't quite. It starts off kind of like, a Tales from the Crypt episode, where there's 3 segments in Creepshow 2, and each one it kind of starts with that comic book page, and then it goes into that particular segment. Unlike the first Creepshow had a few more segments than this one. There's only 3 here, and there's your interstitials. But there seems to be some kind of maybe a budgetary issue here, though. The interstitial begins with, you see the creep who played by Tom Savini briefly at the beginning, and then it turns to cartoon. So all of that, the interstitials, except for the very beginning of it and the very kind of last shot, is all animated, and it involves like this kid being bullied who ends up ordering some Venus flytraps, and there's also the creep character, and trying to be kind of like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt, but it doesn't quite work. I don't really like the dialogue that much for it, but I had a little more tolerance for it this time. But last time I watched it, it really was glaring to me how it wasn't, those animated segments they're not written very well. Most of this is written by George Romero. George Romero and Stephen King both worked on Creepshow 1 and Creepshow 2 as writers. George Romero directed this one. His long-term director of photography or cinematographer, Michael Gornick, directed Creepshow 2. And also, what I consider to be, there is a Creepshow 3 that came out a lot later, and I don't really consider that to be Creepshow 3 per se, because it didn't involve the same people. But what I consider to be Creepshow 3 is Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, which is very similar in tone. This one came out in 1990, very similar in tone to Creepshow 1 and 2. I did a video last year. You can check that out on my channel, where I took the segments from these films and I ranked them, and you can check that out on my channel. I'm not sure how good it is at this point, but maybe it holds up. I guess maybe, I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about the segments of Creepshow 2, and then we're going to get into this packaging. But the first segment, for those who haven't seen it, for those who have seen it, we're going to talk about it now. This is one I've seen a bunch of times. The first segment is called Old Chief Woodenhead. Now, there's even, like, I believe saw it at a library once. There was like a graphic novel that I read of this as well that even helped really wrap my head around some of this stuff. Not that there's a lot to wrap your head around, because it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The first one is a revenge tale, and it's about a cigar store Indian outside of this general store in this broken down town. The shop owner, played by George Kennedy. George Kennedy and his wife, they're running the shop. The town's kind of, it's gotten very poor. It used to be booming, but now everyone's moved on, and the store is, they're not, it's not making money anymore. But at the same time, they used to make money when the town was really busy. So George Kennedy's character feels like an obligation to the people who live there. And but anyway, so he's got this cigar store Indian outside of the shop that comes to life, and during the course of it, before it does come to life, you kind of see it move slightly every now and then. It's a pretty creepy thing, that old Chief Wooden had. And eventually what happens is some hoodlums come in there, and then they rob them, and they end up killing the store owner and his wife. And then they go out and mess with the Indian. I think he shoots the Indian or something, but that Indian gets pretty upset from that, and he goes after all three of them and kills them. And they do this in a very creative way. They don't necessarily show the Indian that good moving. It must have been either a budgetary constraint, or it was they wanted to kind of save it for a very scary shot when you actually see him moving. But the first time you see him, he just shoots the first guy with a bow and arrow. The second time, you see him in the shadow kill this guy with a tomahawk, and then the last one he ends up scalping the dude. But you actually see him on camera come out, and he brings the hatchet up and goes to scalp him, and then it cuts before we actually see any gore. Now, there's some gore in this, but it does often cut in an effective way. I think it works what they don't show, because then you do see the scalp later on. And then the second one is probably the best one of the three, but it's called The Raft, and it's kind of this blob creature that lives in this lake. These teenagers go to this lake who has a big kind of raft thing in the middle of it, and then they swim out to the raft, and then this blob thing ends up like killing them. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing. Maybe I will, but it ends up swallowing them whole, and then they realize they got an issue. All three of these segments are roughly a little bit under 30 minutes each, but and then with the interstitials in there, they're probably maybe 20 something minutes. And then the third one and the last one is called The Hitchhiker, and I refer to it as "Thanks for the ride, lady." So it's like this woman, this rich woman, is driving. She hits this hitchhiker, and then she does a hit and run. She drives away, and then she's starting to feel guilty about it. And suddenly, the hitchhiker guy that she hit and killed, shows back up walking down the road, and then he starts jumping on her car, and he continues to harass her. And then she drives through the woods, and it goes on for quite some time. And this one, all at night, and pretty impressive car stunts. It was probably the most difficult of the three to shoot, but it's a pretty fun ride. And then the guy's like, the hitchhiker keeps going, "Thanks for the ride, lady," and he's trying to climb in the car. It's really pretty scary thought with that. But so those are the three segments, and if you want to see my ranking on those segments, you can check out my video from last year. But let's go ahead and take a look at this amazing physical packaging. And on the inside, first off, we have this release. So this is the same cover art as the Blu-ray from before. Now this one does have a 4K in it, one disc only, and there's also like a little poster art card for Creepshow 2. I'm sorry, that is not an art card. This is actually a booklet. That's the art card in there. It says "The Oily Maniac," Arrow release that's coming out perhaps in the near future. But here's Creepshow 2, the booklet. And there's that old Chief Wooden head that we were talking about earlier. This has the cast on it. George Kennedy apparently top billed in here, but I think he's second billed otherwise. But him and his wife are billed first. This one actually has them in order of appearance. And then here's the lady from "Thanks for the Ride, Lady," who gets hits the hitchhiker, and her name is Annie. Stephen King actually has a cameo in that part as a truck driver. Pretty goofy cameo. And there's what the creep looks like in the animated parts. And here's the teenagers who go to the raft on the raft segment. There's a scene in the car before they get there. It's another one of the animated creep, voiced by Tom Savini. And here's an Indian who's a good Indian in the first. Well, I guess a Native American. I guess we're not calling them Indians anymore, but he is a indigenous and I guess earlier when I was referring to the old Chief Woodenhead. I think I called him a cigar store Indian. That's probably not accurate anymore, but that's the way it used to be. And I don't know. I've always considered him to be a cigar store Indian, but like I guess it's a cigar store Native American, or maybe we'll add some more words to it for reasons. But anyway, here's the girl in the lake, the first one that gets killed by the black blob creature in the raft. And here we got about the presentation, which I'm going to read to you here in a minute. And there's Tom Savini as the creep in the makeup in live action form. All right, so let's go ahead and read about it. About the presentation. Creepshow 2 is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1:85:1, which is widescreen, with mono, stereo, and 5.1 audio. The film is presented in 4K resolution in HDR10 and Dolby Vision. So it does have the HDR grading on there, which looks quite fantastic, especially when you look at the skin tones here. They really look realistic. The original soundtrack was transferred so it has the original soundtrack from the 35mm magnetic master reels by Deluxe Audio Services, Los Angeles, and was conformed and restored at Pinewood Studios. All materials sourced for this new master were made available by Lakeshore Entertainment and Underground Vaults and Storage. And it tells you who it was supervised by. So it's a pretty impressive restoration here. And we're going to talk about it, the 4K, in just a moment. Something I almost forgot to show you. Take a look at this. Now, when you open this up, there is a reversible insert. See this? Now, on the back here, we have the poster for the original Creepshow 2, which is the same poster that is on the booklet on the inside here. Now, there is something very special. Take a look at this. Now, this is a comic book, and this is Creepshow. It's called Pinfall, a Lost Tale of Horror. Now, this is apparently there was supposed to be another story in this one. This is a bowling short with some zombies, and it's one that didn't make it into the film, but there is now I called it comic book, but it's really a graphic novel form, and it goes through this whole what would have been another short. It would have been nice had there been a fourth short in this film. I think it would have really been the icing on the cake, and it would have really made this film maybe not as good as the first one, but it would have been closer to being as good as the first one. There's eventually zombies in here in bowling. This would have been a fun one to see on screen. Now, there aren't any new special features on here in comparison to the ones that were on the Blu-ray edition, but there's some pretty good ones, and there's a pretty good bit of special features, including the audio commentary with the director Michael Gornick. It said Poncho's Last Ride, an interview with the actor Daniel Beer, who's one of the teen actors in the Raft segment. Now, something I wanted to say about the Raft segment that I didn't say before. Now, this may be a little spoilery, but when it gets down to the last two, it's like this kind of the nerdy guy and the hotter girlfriend of the big jock guy who's killed by the blob. So they're laying there on the raft, and it gets dark and it's morning, and she falls asleep, and then during this sequence, he all of a sudden decides to pull her shirt up and check out her breasts, which they look nice on screen, but it really messes up the character. It's like, what are you doing? And this is what ends up killing her, because while he's doing this, she's like, no, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. But then she's saying no about it because that blob thing has come up through the bottom of the raft and grabbed her face and is eating her. So, but I thought that was always such an odd thing that he does that in the film. Now, again, it was nice to see her breasts there. But let's see. There's also an interview with the actor Tom Wright, which is called A Road to Dover. Now, Tom Wright is the actor that plays the hitchhiker who goes, "Thanks for the ride, lady." So it was really nice to see that interview, and he talks about that role and how unique it was, and kind of what he did to get into that mindset of this hitchhiker that continues to come after her. Now I'm gonna say something else too about that short, "Thanks for the ride, lady" short, because it's one of those things where he just keeps coming, and this lady, and it kind of may seem like it may be all in her head, but there is at the end of it, like he just keeps coming, and she keeps trying to get away. It gets to the point where she ends up trying to kill the apparition of this hitchhiker that she had already killed once. But then it gets to the end, she goes into her garage, and he shows up in the garage, and the car's still on, and he attacks her. And so it makes it look like it may have all been in her head, because she dies in the garage from the carbon monoxide poisoning. But she has a sign around her neck, says Dover, like that's where he was going, like to Dover, and that's the sign the hitchhiker has. So it makes you know, just from that sign being around her neck, that is proof that it wasn't an imagination. And let's see, and also there's an interview. Now all these interviews were shot in 2016 with this, and there's one from George Romero, and there's another one with Tom Savini, and then there's an archive featurette about the special effects that has interviews with FX artist Howard Berger and Greg Nicotero. And then there's another one with special effects that also includes Howard Berger talking about his mentor Rick Baker. And then there's some behind the scenes footage, and there's a bunch of other special features. So there's a decent amount of special features here. Unfortunately, there's nothing new. If you already have the Blu-ray, there's nothing new for special feature wise. In comparison to the Blu-ray here, it says the Blu-ray just says a new 2K restoration from the original film Elements. High definition Blu-ray 1080p. Now this one does not have a Blu-ray in it. It only comes with that 4K disc. So here's what the Blu-ray looks like. The same disc. It actually has an older flyer there, but this one is just a standard edition without all the bells and whistles, like that comic book and the booklet, and this amazing thick and red slipcover. But as far as so I was able to look at the Blu-ray and compare it to the 4K, and it is quite a leap in quality. This one is pronounced, especially when you see the clarity and the sharpness in some of the scenes. You see, especially the close-ups of people, and the darker areas, like the blacker areas, do look deeper and much darker. I'm not talking about just the end sequence, which takes place mostly at night. With that one, is probably the least pronounced as far as the dark areas look great. You still got, this was shot on film, so you got some film grain going on, and they're not like a wall of film grain. It's fairly nicely resolved, and you don't really notice it, but it doesn't look like it was cleaned up in an invasive manner. But as far as when I talk about the darker areas, I mean, just like when you see someone's close up, George Kennedy's close up in the earlier scenes, it just looks so much better. Just the way that they brought the black levels down, and then they brought the contrast up, and to me that looks so much better. And the one that sticks out to me the most, that looks so much better, is the raft sequence. One of the girls, for most of it, wears like a red shirt, and that red shirt just kind of pops out at you in that HDR grading. But that sequence, that one's mostly outside day. It just looks to me like so much better as far as just the sharpness and the clarity and all the fine detail that you see within it. But really, all three of the segments, even the cartoon stuff, it does have a uptick in quality. But I think this is definitely one where I think the 4K, it definitely is better than the Blu-ray. Now, if they took this same 4K transfer and they put it on a Blu-ray, it would probably look similar, and it would probably look fine on most TVs, unless you got like a really big one. Then you might see some quality degeneration. But for the most part, this thing looks terrific. So let's go ahead and rate this movie on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I'm going to give Creepshow 2 a 4-star rating. I really like this movie. And I think it's like last time I watched it a few years ago, I wasn't quite as impressed with it, but this time for some reason it just clicked with me all again. But I really have enjoyed this movie throughout the years. Even though now I think the Creepshow 1 is a better film, but I still think this one is pretty damn awesome, and I'm really happy with this limited edition release. I'm glad to have been able to get this. I'm going to give Arrow Video, also, I'm going to give them a 4.5-star rating for their release. I highly recommend snagging this thing. I think the 4K transfer is well worth it, and this limited edition packaging is badass. And if you haven't done so already, if you would like this video, hey, you see this box right here? If you click on that box, it's going to bring you to another one of my review videos, and you can check that out. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.